Hi, I'm Alex Binns and I was in charge of mise en scène.
Hi, I'm Sophie Kilby and I was in charge of sound.
Hi, I'm Hannah Wilson and I was in charge of camera shots.
Hi, I'm Alex Horsfield and I was in charge of editing, and we are Printtox Films. Our film was of the horror genre, which we had established right from the start through the use of sound and colours representing certain moods in the opening titles. The titles use a red and black colour scheme which connotes death and danger, and the sound of the kettle coming in over the top creates a mystery in the audience as bubbling can have connotations of hell. At first our film challenges the typical conventions of that genre through it being set in the daytime. Generally, horrors tend to be set at night to create tension and the feeling of isolation, whereas we created that isolation through other methods, such as the phone not working and the fact that he is just on his own. We also challenge typical conventions of real media products, such as for the first few shots our character is doing fairly mundane tasks like making a cup of tea, which doesn't build tension in the audience from the start, as most horrors do. However, we feel that this makes it even more jolting and frightening when the ghost appears behind our protagonist in the mirror. In typical horrors, the audience knows when a moment like this is going to happen, as the music and the camera shots have all built up to it beforehand, so we thought we would make it more surprising and not build up to it. We do use some of the typical conventions, though as the audience of a horror expect some familiarity. We had our protagonist descending into an enclosed dark room which can have connotations descending into a grave, which hints that the character is about to die. This idea is one used in many horror films, including the Blair Witch Project. Our mirror shot was also a typical convention used in horrors, and even though we used it slightly differently to how it is normally done, it is still a cliché of the genre.
Our film represents a working-class caretaker in the form of our protagonist. The lonely nature of his job is shown by the fact he is alone throughout the entirety of the opening and cannot contact anyone as his phone is being blocked by our antagonist. He is shown to be below other people through the fact he is working in the cramped, unclean room on his own. He then goes down even further into the boiler room, showing how his existence is almost hidden away below the normal world. He is represented as ordinary through the mundane things he does at the beginning of the opening, such as making a cup of tea, etc. His clothes are also plain and uninteresting, signifying the same about his life.
Our film would most likely be distributed by an independent British organisation such as Film 4. This is mainly due to our use of subverting conventions rather than sticking to them, which a big American company like Universal would prefer as it is more comfortable for the audience. The big companies are interested in bringing a large profit, so they want films that will appeal to large audiences and that will be easy watching for viewers. Independent film companies, on the other hand, aim more to give new directors and actors a chance to be heard, and they're not bothered by attracting huge audiences and profits. They would prefer a film which is challenging to the viewer and that subverts rather than sticks to the Hollywood clichés. Attack the Block is another film which does this, as it uses some clichés, but mostly to mock them for comic effect. Our film is also grittier than most blockbuster horrors, as it starts by showing a lowly working-class protagonist rather than the more middle-class teenagers as are generally shown in the bigger budget horrors, such as in The Ring, which has middle-class teenage girls. Our film is also very typically British, which is why the big American production companies probably wouldn't take it up. The focus on a working-class character in a gritty setting is typical of British films, such as Shaun of the Dead, which follows middle-class characters. Also, we use irony, which tends to be a more British convention, in the form of the song about death coming over the radio. The fact that our protagonist is making a cup of tea is also very typically British.
Our audience is both males and females around the age 16 to 25 and generally of a working or middle class social background. Horrors tend to attract the same people every time, as people who know they don't like horrors will probably not go to see any horror, whereas other genres tend to have a less clear-cut fan base.
We attracted and addressed our audience by making our protagonist from a working class background, a caretaker, and a young adult, allowing him to become more accessible to our audience by embodying our target audience in character form. He should be relatable and set the precedent for the rest of the film. The target audience will now be aware of the sorts of characters, young working class people, the film will entail. The focus on the working class is also very typical of independent British films, as seen in films such as Shaun of the Dead and Attack the Block. This is generally because a majority of British society is working class, and this is something British films can accurately portray, which American films cannot. As our film is of the horror genre, we ensure that the audience received the expected thrills and suspense, which are typical conventions of horror films.
The main thing we learnt about technologies through the making of our film was the vast difference between HD and standard definition. Our camera that we borrowed from school was standard, and the quality, as you'll see in our film, was not great. We did use a HD camera for one of our shoots on the original idea, and the quality was much better. However, the camera was designed for photography rather than filming, so it kept overheating and ran out of battery very quickly, meaning that it was impractical for use in our film. We also learned that sound is difficult to record using just the cameras, as background noise was a problem in all our shots, and when the camera was further away from what was making a sound, the built-in microphone just wasn't powerful enough. In a professional film, boom microphones would be used to ensure the sound was recorded properly, but as we didn't have access to this type of equipment, instead we used a voice recorder to record all our sound afterwards and then dub it in. We also learned the importance of software in editing, as although our version of Sony Vegas that we used did have most of the features we wanted, there were a few times when we had to change our plans for the editing, as the necessary features weren't there. For example, we wanted to have the text of our actor's name looking like it was on the countertop and then disappearing as the actor walked past it. But the tool we needed to do that was not available in our version of Vegas, so we thought we were going to have to settle for putting the text elsewhere. However, in the end, we did manage to do as we wanted, as a member of our group had a more recent version of the software at home.
Throughout our filming experience, we have come across numerous problems. However, we have learnt from these as to improve and have a more successful filming session next time. The main thing we have learnt is to be organised by planning properly, sticking to the plan, and remember to bring all the equipment to our chosen location. For our first attempt at our final draft, we discovered that timing was important, as it caused continuity errors when we edited the shots together. This is because we filmed at different times of the day, meaning lighting became an issue. Testing difficult shots before the filming session would mean that we are prepared in case any problems occur. For example, the mirror shot that we successfully planned and tested. This proved to be effective, and no time was wasted setting up the shot during the limited time we had with the actors. We discovered through the editing that we can alter the colour balance and the video effects. This can improve the appearance of the shots, as it is more fitting for the horror genre.